today, I am announcing this government will make a new free of charge digital ID mandatory for the right to work by the end of this Parliament. Let me spell that out. You will not be able to work in the United Kingdom if you do not have digital ID. It's as simple as that.
It is absolutely clear that people are working illegally in numbers.
But why do you think that them having to have a digital ID would stop that problem when right now people are meant to have a national insurance number and card, and if they're not asked for that, a boss is willing already to break the rules? What's the difference going to be?
Well, the difference is this is on point of starting, not a retrospective exercise as it now is. It is an automatic collection of the information by the government, so we know exactly who is working in our economy, and it will help us enforce the rules that are there.
The police will be on their best behavior because we're constantly watching and recording everything that's going on. Citizens will be on their best behavior because we're constantly recording and reporting everything that's going on.
Tell us a bit about because you're right at the forefront of this revolution, what it means for what government should do in terms of its digital infrastructure, digital ID, data centers, and so on.
The first thing a country needs to do is to unify all of their data so it can be consumed and used by the AI model. You have to take all of your healthcare data, your diagnostic data, your electronic health records, your genomic data. And in the Middle East, in the UAE, for example, they're incredibly rich in data. They have a lot of population data. The NHS in the UK has an incredible amount of population data, but it's fragmented. It's not easily accessible by these AI models. We have to take all of this data we have in our country and move it into a single, if you will, unified data platform. So we provide context. When we want to ask a question, we've provided that AI model with all the data they need to understand our country. So that's the big step. That's kind of the missing link. We need to unify all of the national data, put it into a database where it's easily consumable by the AI model, and then ask whatever question you like. This is the last year you will ever log on to an Oracle system with a password. I mean, I'm quite certain you are Tony Blair. So how do I know? Well, I look at you, I hear your voice, I listen to the kind of questions you ask. I'm pretty sure you're not synthetically created. The security system, we have biometric logins. The computer recognizes you. It recognizes your voice. It might ask you to put your index finger on the return key. And we're absolutely certain it's you. There's no reason to enter a password. In fact, passwords are too easily stolen. We can make sure that we're using the latest security technology, and it is going to be biometrics assisted by AI to make sure that you are in fact Tony Blair, and I'm sure you are.
There's an amazing opportunity to reimagine the state, the way that government functions, and the service that it can provide for its citizens.
Listen, while they're distracting people with big headlines, the insiders are getting ready. Billionaires, big banks, and governments are all quietly hoarding gold and silver. They know the dollar is being devalued, and they know the next crash is coming. While they prepare, the average American is left in the dark. But you don't have to be. Noble Gold Investments makes it simple to protect yourself with the same investment-grade gold and silver the elites are stockpiling. Real assets you can hold in your hand or keep safe in your retirement account. You can either watch the next crisis unfold or follow the moves of the ones pulling the strings. Visit noblegoldinvestments.com right now. That's noblegoldinvestments.com. Follow the money. It always tells the truth. Hey, Inspire Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers. It's John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in. It is Monday, September 29th, 1984. Thank you for joining us. We're going out of the Matrix into Prime Reality. It's good to see you on X, Rumble, and YouTube. Of course, in the live chat, our wonderful moderators, Ronnie And Two Steps Behind, aka Raymond. Thank you for your wonderful work. Unfortunately, Christine can't be here today, but we're going to do this together, friends. Well, it's a big month. The end of September, but specifically going into October. October is always a big month, hence all the psyops, the false flags. If you are in Denmark, then you're experiencing what we have experienced here in the United States late last year, the Jersey drones, weeks and weeks of, crazy sightings. And right now Denmark is experiencing that. And I think some other places in the world, but Denmark is really taking it seriously. And it's all about defense and recruiting reserve soldiers and all of the above. And of course, it's big distractions. In October, a lot of things are implemented in the EU, new data laws, new internet laws, new censorship laws, and so forth. Of course, we just heard Keir Starmer, the comedian acting as the prime minister in the UK, has announced out with a firm voice that, there will be now digital ID. So 1984, A Brave New World, some sort of a mishmash of the two is here. And, with every such step that is taken, we look back at these quote unquote prophets or people that predicted this time, wrote about it. When you do a little bit of digging on the likes of George Orwell, Aldous Huxley, and others, they were very, very deeply connected into certain societies, into certain secret and non-so-secret societies. And their books were both a warning, a game plan, putting the blueprint out there, but there are some hidden messages that if people were to use critical thinking and the ability to scale what they observe just a little bit into the future, they could see the hidden messages in there. Before we go and decode what these two have actually been saying all along and have been projecting to the people, had they listened, it's a very clear message. Before we do that, I want to play two clips. I start with a shorter one, which is George Orwell. It's a fictionalized clip because there was no interview with George Orwell, but the BBC fictionalized a deathbed scene. It's only a couple minutes. Let's watch this together because these are the words of George Orwell, but just in a made-for-TV scene.
You have an ability to face unpleasant facts. Is that what you've demonstrated in 1984 by drawing an accurate portrait of the future?
I think that allowing for the book being, after all, a parody, something like 1984 could actually happen. This is the direction the world is going in at the present time. In our world, there will be no emotions except fear, rage, triumph, and self-abasement. The sex instinct will be eradicated. We shall abolish the orgasm. There will be no loyalty except loyalty to the party. But always there will be the intoxication of power. Always, at every moment, there will be the thrill of victory, the sensation of trampling on an enemy who is helpless. If you want a picture of the future, imagine a boot stamping on a human face forever. The moral to be drawn from this dangerous nightmare situation is a simple one. Don't let it happen. It depends on you.
As I said, a fictionalized scene, supposedly, showing George Orwell's deathbed. But there's really one word here, or two words, that really stand out. I want you to mark them, write them down for now. We're going to get to it later. Helpless victims. Okay, helpless victims. Really important two words. And now we're going to go into a longer clip, which is a 1958 interview with Aldous Huxley, who wrote A Brave New World. And this is about a 10-minute excerpt edited with some incredibly important things that he said about this that are going to allow us later to go into what I think the hidden messages here truly are. So let's watch this clip together. Sit back, take a sip of water or coffee and really tune in, because he said this in 1958, folks, right? 58. That's incredible. That's 67 years ago. Let's watch this.
Huxley, in your new essays, you state that these various enemies of freedom are pushing us toward a real-life, brave new world, and you say that it's awaiting us just around the corner. First of all, can you detail for us what life in this brave new world which you fear so much, or what life might be like?
Well, to start with, I think this kind of the dictatorship of the future, I think will be very unlike the dictatorships which we've been familiar with in the immediate past. I mean, take another book prophesying the future, which was a very remarkable book, George Orwell's 1984. Well, this book was written at the height of the Stalinist regime and just after the Hitler regime. And there he foresaw a dictatorship using entirely the methods of terror, the methods of physical violence. Now, I think what is going to happen in the future is the dictators will find, as the old saying goes, that you can do everything with bayonets except sit on them. That if you want to preserve your power indefinitely, you have to get the consent of the ruled. And this they will do partly by drugs, as I foresaw in Brave New World, partly by these new techniques of propaganda. They will do it by bypassing the sort of rational side of man and appealing to his subconscious and his deeper emotions and his physiology even, and so making him actually love his slavery. I mean, I think this is the danger, that actually people may be in some ways happy under the new regime, but they will be happy in a situation where they oughtn't to be happy.
But let me ask you this. You're talking about a world that could take place within the confines of a totalitarian state. Let's become more immediate, more urgent about it. We believe, anyway, that we live in democracy here in the United States. Do you believe that this brave new world that you talk about could, let's say, in the next quarter century, the next century, could come here to our shores?
I think it could. I mean, that's why I feel it's so extremely important here and now to start thinking about these problems, not to let ourselves be taken by surprise by the new advances in technology. I mean, for example, in regard to the use of the drugs, we know there's enough evidence now for us to be able, on the basis of this evidence and using a certain amount of creative imagination, to foresee the kind of uses which could be made by people of bad will with these things, and to attempt to forestall this. And in the same way, I think with these other methods of propaganda, we can foresee and we can do a good deal to forestall. I mean, after all, the price of freedom is eternal vigilance.
You write in Enemies of Freedom, you write specifically about the United States. You say this, writing about American political campaigns. You say, all that is needed is money and a candidate who can be coached to look sincere. Political principles and plans for specific action have come to lose most of their importance. The personality of the candidate, the way he is projected by the advertising experts, are the things that really matter.
Well, this is, during the last campaign, there was a great deal of this kind of statement by the advertising managers of the campaign parties, this idea that the candidates had to be merchandised, though they wear soap or toothpaste, and that you had to depend entirely on the personality. I mean, the personality is important, but there are certainly people with an extremely amiable personality, particularly on TV, who might not necessarily be very good in positions of political trust.
In your essay, you write about television commercials, not just political commercials, but television commercials as such, and how, as you put it, today's children walk around singing beer commercials and toothpaste commercials. And then you link this phenomenon in some way with the dangers of a dictatorship. Now, could you spell out the connection, or how do you feel that you have done so sufficiently?
Well, I mean, here, this whole question of children, I think, is a terribly important one, because the children are quite clearly much more suggestible than the average grown-up. And again, suppose that that for one reason or another all the propaganda was in the hands of one or very few agencies, you would have an extraordinarily powerful force playing on these children, who after all are going to grow up and be adults quite soon. I do think that this is not an immediate threat, but it remains a possible threat. And
you said something to the effect in your essay that the children of Europe used to be called cannon fodder, and here in the United States they are television and radio fodder.
Well, after all, you can read in the trade journals the most lyrical accounts of how necessary it is to get hold of the children, because then they will be loyal brand buyers later on. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, again, you just translate this into political terms. The dictator says they will be loyal ideology buyers when they're grown up.
We hear so much about brainwashing as used by the communists. Do you see any brainwashing other than that which we've just been talking about that is used here in the United States? Other forms of brainwashing?
Not in the form that has been used in China and in Russia, because this is essentially the application of propaganda methods, the most violent kind, to individuals. It's not a shotgun method like the advertising method. It's a way of getting hold of the person and playing both on his physiology and his psychology till he really breaks down, and then you can implant a new idea in his head. I mean, the descriptions of the methods are really blood-curdling when you read them, and not only the methods applied to political prisoners, but the methods applied, for example, to the training of the young communist administrators and missionaries. They receive an incredibly tough kind of training, which may causes about 25% of them to break down or commit suicide, but produces 75% of completely one-pointed fanatics.
The question, of course, that keeps coming back to my mind is this. Obviously, politics in themselves are not evil. Television is not in itself evil. Atomic energy is not evil. And yet you seem to fear that it will be used in an evil way. Why is it that the right people will not, in your estimation, use them? Why is it that the wrong people will use these various devices and for the wrong motives?
Well, I think one of the reasons is that these are all instruments for obtaining power, and obviously the passion for power is one of the most moving passions that exist in man, and after all, all democracies are based on the proposition that power is very dangerous and that it's extremely important not to let any one man or any one small group have too much power for too long a time. After all, what are the British and American constitutions except devices for limiting power? And all these new devices are extremely efficient instruments for the imposition of power by small groups over larger masses.
How can we preserve the integrity and reassert the value of the human individual? You put the question. Now here's your chance to answer it, Mr. Huxley.
Well, this is obviously, first of all, it's a question of education. I think it's terribly important to insist on individual values. I mean, there is a tendency, as you probably read a book by White, The Organization Man, a very interesting, valuable book, I think, where he speaks about the new type of group morality, group ethic, which speaks about the group as though the group was somehow more important than the individual. But this seems, as far as I'm concerned, to be in contradiction with what we know about the genetical makeup of human beings, that every human being is unique. And it is, of course, on this genetical basis that the whole idea of the value of freedom is based. And I think it's extremely important for us to stress this in all our educational life. And I would say it's also very important to teach people to be on their guard against the sort of verbal booby traps into which they're always being led, to analyze the kind of things that are said to them. Well, I think there is this whole educational side, and I think there are many more things that one could do to strengthen people and to make them more aware of what was being done.
You're a prophet of decentralization.
Well, yes, if this is feasible. It's one of the tragedies, it seems to me. I mean, many people have been talking about the importance of decentralization in order to give back to the voter a sense of direct power. I mean, the voter in an enormous electorate feels quite impotent, and his vote seems to count for nothing. This is not true where the electorate is small and where he is dealing with a group which he can manage and understand. And if one can, as Jefferson, after all, suggested, break up the units into smaller and smaller units, and so get a real self-governing democracy.
Yes, so this is a clip of Aldous Huxley, I think very, very illuminating, thinking about, this is 1958 once again, and the things that he talked about are sort of, now we have all the context, we can clearly understand what he was warning about, but I think he had tremendous foresight, and I think it was difficult for people to see what he described back then. However, the real hidden messages in these warnings and books are actually, you know, they're sort of right in front of us. We just don't want to see them, because what all these people have been saying and writing about is the fact that there is an inevitability in the way that these systems are structured and have been structured for thousands of years. There's an inevitability that it always comes to the point where we're at now, where you have totalitarianism and where people don't even recognize it any longer because it's been creeping in and creeping in and creeping in. I recently thought about an email that I sent to my dad some 18 years ago. I literally, in that email, I wrote about how the digital ID and digital currencies were going to affect his life, and what it will and will not make possible, and how it will potentially curtail his freedom completely. And what he replied was, "It's never going to happen in my lifetime, ever." And he didn't say it's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen in his lifetime, but he is alive and it's happening. And we're now at this point where the question is not, can we halt digital ID for another year or two? Can we push this back for a little bit? The question is, why is it in our civilizations, does it inevitably come to this point that leads to destruction, that leads to the downfall? And the hidden message in all of this always has been, it's a completely wrong system. Like and this is what people don't like to hear. It's not that we need to change a few things or vote for somebody else or amend a constitution or change a law. No, it's this entire structure, how it was built, and it is a complete artificial structure. So we can talk about this being a simulated, a constructed reality, a matrix reality, and that's what I think it really is. But within this reality, there is a system in place that functions without us doing anything for or against it. It just functions. So there's a natural system in place. That system has cycles, it has rhythms, it has balance, it works until we mess with it, and then we get into all kinds of trouble. But we haven't just messed with the system. We have created an artificial world within this world that functions by its own rules, and that is at odds with the natural system every single day, every second, and every day. It doesn't do anything with this natural system. It works constantly against it. And by doing that, we have created a monstrous system that now simply, it is just scaling. And it is always puzzling to me that people couldn't see this 20 years ago, because every development, no development stops where it's at. Nothing in this artificial world just stops. There's always more and more and more. So where was it at? Like compare the 1990s or the 2000s. Let's take the 2000s. Compare the freedom of the 2000s to the freedom of the 80s. There was far less freedom in the 2000s than there was in the 80s. More and more, the systems in the government came in and tightened the screws and tightened the rules And it was always going hand in hand with technological developments that actually allowed them to do it, right? So then people, for some reason, because they think like toddlers or don't think at all, I don't know, they think that somehow more of the same can bring a different outcome. And so we're racing and we're introducing even more artificial technology into this. And with every introduction of more artificial technology, more control comes in, more chaos comes in, more sickness comes in, more of everything that's really anti-human, anti-natural comes in. And yet we continually believe that more of it will finally be the fix. And so we are, by definition, complete morons by thinking this way. It is our thinking that is completely erroneous, that is wrong. It's not, let's steer 1 degree here, 1 degree there. It's not whether the United States or some other country can maintain a quasi-digital free identity for a little longer. It doesn't really matter, because we're not fundamentally asking, where did we go wrong? And it's not 20 years ago, it's not 40 years ago, it's not 100 years ago. We went wrong a long time ago, and this has been building up ever since. And so these are the hard questions that nobody wants to ask and nobody wants to talk about, because it is inevitable discomfort and it is inevitable pain, because it means we need to rethink absolutely everything. And this system that we currently have is on a path of self-destruction. There is no, this is what scaling does, friends. Scaling is taking where we're at, and if we go at the current pace of progress, which we're not, because progress is always accelerating, technological progress is now exponentially accelerating, so we can't take the current rate of progress. Everything is moving much faster. If we take the current rate of progress, destruction of at least our civilization is a given. I'm not saying this because this is doom. This is just logical, critical, and mathematical thinking. So because we haven't altered our course, in my lifetime or in the lifetime of most of you, the course has not been altered. People just think we are in a different course than we were 50, 60 years ago. No, we've been always going in the same direction. There, during 1 decade, the marketing is different. How it's being presented is different. We're going a little bit green here, then we're going super industrial here, then going highly technological here, but the train is really going in the same direction. So where do I look for, what are solutions, quote unquote? Well, the solution is so simple that people can't possibly comprehend it. It's a complete and utter restructuring of how we view life, how we live life, what we do, how we create, what we don't do. Like, it's a complete restructuring. Not, let's go from capitalism supposedly to democracy to communism to socialism. No. That's all bullshit. That's all one system in different disguises. There is no technological civilization, meaning there is no civilization in the world today that has gone the technocratic route, meaning going all in on artificial structures and system and leaving nature to the side or behind. There is none that can show continual progress for hundreds of years, let alone thousands of years. All these civilizations have had severe interruptions, have gone down, had to be reset, had to be destroyed, had to be moved, had to be changed, had to be called some. So these cycles are much quicker than people think. Yes, we have matrix reset cycles. Yes, we have natural disaster cycles, but that's not what I'm talking about. Any political form or structure does not survive the 200-year point ever. It simply doesn't. There's no proof for that. If it does 200 years, usually it's 100 tops, maybe 130. We can't show any linear progress like that. But there are people still on this earth today that can. There are people, very few left, tribal people, natural people, that can show thousands and thousands and thousands of years of virtually, maybe some affected by natural disasters, yes, but that can show a continuum in their lifestyles that have not deviated for hundreds and hundreds of years. So they can show survival, they can show health, they can show knowledge and wisdom about nature, some of them, I should say, that we have not had for a very, very long time. Now, do I say we should model ourselves after one specific tribe or indigenous people? I can't say that. What I can say is that those are the only kinds of lifestyles, because they're natural, they're in sync with the system that is here. Those are the only kinds that can show continual presence, virtually uninterrupted for hundreds and hundreds and sometimes thousands of years, right? So, and some of them had warfare, some of them had other civilizational problems, yes. There's no doubt about it, but there are some who virtually still live today like they did thousands of years ago. And we can't say that. We can't say we live today like we did 5 years ago, right? So we don't have that kind of continuum. And they can show that they have preserved knowledge for at least hundreds of years, if not thousands of years. None of us can say that. We don't even know who our great grandparents were. So if the solution does not include a learning and remembering of all natural cycles that we live with, if the solution does not include basing our lives on nature as we find it and see it and live with it, not against it, or not to the side of it, but with it. If solutions do not include that, they're not solutions. There may be mitigation practices, or there maybe will delay certain effects, but they're not solutions. The artificial structures that we see, there is a story that reverberates, that repeats throughout the universe and the galaxies, is that these structures always fail. They always lead to catastrophes, or they lead to the de-organification of everything. So we have, at least anecdotal, because nobody can say they have surefire evidence, but we have anecdotal evidence over a long period of time that supposedly, allegedly, species from other dimensions, from other solar systems or planets, or however you want to call it, have gone down the same route as we have and are looking for that organic piece that we still hold. You want to call it spirit, maybe? They're looking for that. There is a record of that having existed, but they have gone down the technological, technocratic, artificial path. So digital ID is not the problem, it's the symptom of the problem. Digital currency is not the problem, it's the symptom of the problem. It's just one that's very acute, that is very big and very in our faces. But this is, how do I put this? We have already been hijacked. Listen to people like Dr. Grube, who and his colleagues, who literally, what they do is they put under their electronic microscopes, who there's only very few of them in the world because they're so expensive, but they're putting blood samples of virtually everything and everyone they can get their hands on under there. There is no blood sample that's not contaminated with nanotech. So none of us are pure. So we can say we didn't get this, but we're still not pure. There are mitigation strategies, but this is the slow end, and it's not so slow anymore, of our species. So when people want to debate me on digital ID or central bank digital currency, I will not debate anyone. It's a waste of my time. It's clearly the millionth wrong step on a long journey, right? So people want to debate that, go ahead and do it. It's like completely useless. We have a much, much bigger question right here, right now. These are the last years where we find a somewhat pure version of this biology here, and a somewhat still capable people of having spiritual connections and making different decisions. And if we don't use those abilities here and now, right now, to make different decisions, that's that. That's going to be that. And so, no, nobody, not a single person in office right now is going down any different route. And everything else is a fairy tale, a complete fairy tale that shouldn't have reached anyone but small children, but it has reached grown-ass adults. And I know why, because they're traumatized, because they're fed up, because they are panicked, and because they want to believe, that such a fairy tale, can be true, and that these alliances are out there doing things so that this won't happen, when they are pushing it faster than ever before. And these things, ultimately, these technologies, and this is what the people will tell you that are doing this, these technologies will not function unless we are plugged into them. These technologies won't fulfill their purpose as intended if we're not plugged into them. So there is no such thing as, oh, this is just going to be on your phone. No, this is just the next step. In many countries, people are complete, like they've lost their minds. They're voluntarily chipping themselves, right? Because it's so convenient that you have a chip in your hand. Well, if you're a moron, at least let everybody know you're a moron. And so I am in no way, shape, or form am I hopeless, because here's the fundamental part. You only have a choice in any of this if you do not fear the death of the physical body. If you fear the death of the physical body, you have no choice. You got to go along, because your brain will tell you, listen, if I don't go along with this, I'm going to get in a lot of trouble. I might not be able to buy food at the store. I might not be able to get my paycheck. I might not be able to do this. So I better get along, because if I don't, I might die. Yeah, true. That might happen. And if you're afraid of that, naturally, that's your choice. This is where you can log off this live stream, because whatever comes next is not for you. If you're afraid, and if you're going to make your choices out of fear, that's it. So in order to make a different choice, it's only available to the people who have no fear of physical death of the body. If you have no fear, you can make a different choice, because then you're already free. Then you're free of the biggest blackmail strategy that they have, because that's what they're holding over people's heads. When Keir Starmer is saying people won't be able to work, what is he really saying? People won't be able to make a living, won't be able to earn money and purchase necessary goods with that money. That's really what he's saying. So he's saying, and if people can't do that, well, they won't survive. So this is the real message here. Let's not talk about boats and migrants and all this charade, but let's talk about the truth. So when we are afraid to die and afraid of physical death, we can't make free choices. So we're only afraid of dying because we believe it's the end, because we believe we are these bodies, because we believe we're the name and the role and how we look and all these things, and we're truly not at all. If I were to put this in a chart, maybe in a pie, those chart pies, the part of you that is represented by this body is such a thin slice of that pie you wouldn't even see it. That's really how small that part is of you. The rest is the real you. And the real you doesn't cease to exist when it leaves this body. So then how would that real you live and make decisions? Well, clearly it would not accept tyranny or some sort of, complete, a stealing of all rights, a invasion into all spaces. It would never accept that. And it would make choices where it could sustain itself without this system. And this is what literally the call is. The call in 2025 is not to vote for a different party, because if you're still on that train, well, good luck to you. The call in 2025 is to structure and create a completely different life. I'm not saying that I know anyone who's fully there. Maybe a little, maybe 90% there. I don't know anyone who's fully there. But people are well on their path. And when you do it yourself, you got to go 100% all in your own. When you do it in community or find communities or seek out communities or connect with people, well, then, you bring 20%, they bring 20%, that brings, and in the end, it's a full picture, right? And you can level up together. And really, there's no time for this discussion of, oh, that's hard or that's difficult or whatever. Yeah, no shit, it is. Yeah, it's hard to go from a plugged-in Matrix life where you DoorDash and Uber Eats and get everything delivered and get your groceries delivered and have no idea about how to grow food. Yeah, if you want to go from that to the other thing, yeah, it's gonna be work, discipline, challenge. So what? So what? Who cares? Who cares if it's uncomfortable? Like, honestly, who cares? What's the big deal? What's a little discomfort? I tell you what's going to be a lot more uncomfortable. A lot more uncomfortable is try to be a freedom-loving spirit in a system that despises nothing more but freedom and an individual choice. That despises the very, very notion of wanting to be in control of your own choices, your own life, your own decisions. It despises that. It hates that. It's unpredictable to it, and it hates unpredictability. This system hates unpredictability. That's why it does everything to be able to predict your choices, limit them, and then control them. Easy as pie to see that. I'm thrilled more than ever how many people are awakening. I just trust that they're awakening to actually more truth than falsehoods, because the internet apostles, 90% of them, sorry, but what they are saying is useless because they've only started thinking about these things a few years ago. I mean, not to put anyone on a pedestal, but I would listen to people that have been around for 30 years or 40 years who have been thinking like that, who've actually built out complete thought structures and who know from beginning to end how this system operates. Like, if you're going to look for those folks, they're out there. They're out there. But the current, social media warriors have very, very, very little clue. They have the interest, they have the spark, they want to, but their thinking just hasn't been in the right place for long enough. And this is really what it comes down to. It's right kind of thinking. And the right thinking is, if you don't see that this is a mad system, I'll tell you what I've been observing for the last years here in Tennessee. We're in the broader Nashville area, and the amount of beautiful nature that was destroyed without any regard, without any the ecosystems, I know of so many sites that were beautiful ecosystems with birds and animals you wouldn't see everywhere, and with no regard for wetlands, for flood zones, you name it, just complete disregard. Let's go build, right? It's causing all kinds of problems every time it rains, but who cares? Because we're insane. It's insanity. And the insanity goes, we're contaminating everything around us, right? We're contaminating the water, the air, but it's not just it's not just geoengineering, it's not just chemtrails, it's not just poisons in the food and the water, it's us. We go along with it, we participate in it. And so it's really, really, really time. And I'm including myself in this because to a certain degree, so am I. I see that. I'm every day I ask myself, how do I contribute less to this and more to that? Like I do, it's a transition. So I'm not saying go judge yourself, go harsh on yourself. But when you can see it, like once we see the errors in our thinking, it's okay. Now we see it, but we have to change it. If we keep on going beyond the point that we have discovered the errors, that's insanity. That's self-destruction. And so I'm not mad at Keir Starmer, because in a few years nobody will remember Keir Starmer. Won't matter. The guy doesn't matter. The person in front of the microphone does not matter. They're mouthpieces. They're fulfilling whatever their masters have brought to them. That's all that they do. They don't have these ideas, that they haven't come up with it. They're just the current piece in front of the camera. And the guy's going to be gone very soon, and the next guy or next girl is going to come. And so, once again, the it not a I'm almost at a loss for words. There is no more waiting time. If you want, if your desire is to live a life where you have freedom over your choices, there is no more time to wait. And the beautiful thing is, and here, because I really want to finish on a very, very high note, because I understand what I just shared might be disruptive to your system, might have shook you, or even shocked you, and that was fully intended, but not to stay there. Here's what truly happens when we allow it. When we allow for truth to come into our system and see things for what they are, not for what we want them to be, not for what we hope they could be, but for what they are, we can finally say, okay, I see it now. This is the trajectory. I don't have to pretend to myself any longer. Now that's a burden to keep pretending. So now, what is it that I need to do first? And the very first thing that I would encourage everyone to do is, after you log off here, to give yourself 10 minutes of breath work, to go and breathe deeply into your spirit, into your being, and connect with spirit again. Connect with spirit, because you're created from that. That's your true nature. And if any fear is inside your being, this is the cure. If you go deep and you meditate and you connect, fear cannot be inside of you at the same time, because source does not include fear. There's no fear in source. So then, when that is what you practice, you level up automatically. You level up into higher realms of consciousness, from which creating new thoughts, making new decisions, and taking new actions feels completely different. When you try to solve a problem from the same level of consciousness that you have been in for a very long time, it's almost impossible. You're just doing lateral and lateral movements. You're just moving from here to here on the same level, when you really want to level up. So that's the first thing we got to do. We got to raise our consciousness to levels of greater creativity, so we can sink in with greater solutions, with the right people, with the right circumstances, with the means, with the possibilities. Has anyone in this world, has any politician ever told you this? Has anyone ever said, listen, the first step, we really need to raise our level here. We need to get into a higher standard of feeling, thinking, and intuiting, and go into greater levels of love and bliss and creation. That's not what they talk, because that's not who they are. It's not that they hide this from you. They don't know what that is. And that's the level from which these solutions are created. But solutions are simple. We have to return to the rhythms. We have to return to the whisper in the wind. We have to return to the gentle words that come, and thoughts that come from the water and come from the animals around us. We have to return to the bird song. There's truth all around us if we just choose to tune in. And that truth teaches us, that those things show us the way. And then we got to have the backbone to say yes to that and no to everything that's not that. Say no to anything that doesn't resemble that. I'm talking to a very small minority here. I know this. I know where the masses are going, and that has to be okay. When your heart is set on stopping them, or changing their minds, or that's not going to work, folks. It's never worked. But there's always a but. As always, we can lead by example. Lead by example. Truly be that on every level that you can. And every day take a step in the right direction. And if you currently, for some reason, feel like you're not able to take a step because you're physically impaired, you're sick, something like that, then focus fully on healing, on perfect health. Focus on the power of restructuring. Focus on the the possibility of inviting help into your journey, the right people who you can give something and they can give something to you. Step out of impossible, doesn't work, too hard, into I can. There's always a way. A path will appear. I'm ready for that path. You have to change it. It's all here and here. When those changes happen, this outside of you begins to reflect that. This is what this year calls us to do, in the next one and the next one. And the world's going to still rock, right? It's going to like rock us. It's going to rock us with these kinds of announcements. It's going to make these kinds of changes. And don't wait until the very last moment where you're forced to make a life and death decision. Make the decision now, while you still have a little bit of time, to make different choices. That's all I can say, folks. And I applaud everyone. I'm not saying don't engage in these defiances where people say no, we're not going to use it. When people feel called to sign a petition, if that's what you feel called to, I wouldn't never argue against it. And make it shown and seen and heard that it's a clear no for you, whether that's a digital currency that's mandated, a digital ID that's mandated, anything that gives you a disadvantage, if you don't use it. Just make it very clear, but don't stop there. It's about new choices, okay? I want to turn the page here, but not really fully. One of the things, that we have been looking for in recent years is, or creating for ourselves really, is how can we create the optimal conditions in our brains, in our bodies, in our environment? How do we create the optimal conditions for raising consciousness, and for that's most conducive for the actions that we want to take? And so this is what we call optimization. And this has been something that Christine and I've been very focused on. And I'm the first one to tell you, I am shocked at what it requires currently in many places of the world. A lot of maintenance, a lot of extra help to stay energized, to stay creative. It's not enough today to eat some store-bought food to get all the nutrients, for example. Like, that's one thing. And I've been struggling with this. I've been fighting, for example, I've been really fighting with people around me about this when I said this can't be true, that we have to take supplements every single day to get our levels to the right place. And as much as I tried without it, ultimately, after a certain period of time, I always found myself lacking. So that's the one thing I want to say. We are working on a world where that isn't necessary any longer. But right now, for most of us in most places that we live, it is. So even when we grow our own food, the soil doesn't give us enough nutrients. Hence, the plants don't have enough nutrients. If you're a meat eater, there's not enough nutrients in there. And yes, you can get a lot, but not everything that you need. So that's one thing. And the other thing that has been one of the biggest helpers, and which I consider now the most important services in the world, has been FLFE, which is really playing into all of these other realms. So we're looking for and working with and inviting into our sphere people that have the same zest, the same level of excellence for creating this change that we're all talking about, and who are helping in any way, shape, or form. So today, I just invite you, if you haven't tried it yet, please give FLFE a trial. It's this quantum association service, and literally it turns your home into a sacred site, energetically speaking, right? It doesn't magically change you. It's not a magic elixir that heals you, but it puts you basically it puts your environment at a level as though 10 monks would be meditating in your home at all times. That's kind of what it does. And it's amazing. Like the stories, that I've heard over the years. And the message here is really use such tools when they align with you currently to your advantage. I'm the first one to also say my intention is to work myself straight out of a job. The intention of our friends in, whether that's James Barlow, Barlow Herbal, or whether that's Tim James, Chemical Free Body, the C60 people, the FLFE people, everybody's really working themselves out of a job, and they know it. They know if we do everything right, if we do the best that we can, this won't be necessary. Coming on here and having this kind of conversation so often won't be necessary. We'll meet in other places. We'll sit around the bonfire. We'll share a meal, or we'll do something else. So we all very much are aware of this. But right now, in the thick of it, we choose to work together and help each other, and all of us support each other as best as we can. So I'm sending you much love, friends. We're going to be here again tomorrow and a day after tomorrow, and we're going to show up for as long as we can, and for as long as it's necessary. And then we're going to see you on the other side of this, okay? Sending you much love, many blessings, and we'll be back with you again very, very soon. Your environment shapes everything, your thoughts, your health, your energy, but most people never question the invisible field they live in. We did, and that's when FLFE found us. It's not a product, it's a field of pure life force energy that lifts everything it touches. We now live in it 24/7, and we would love to invite you to experience it too. Start your free 15-day trial now. No pressure, no strings attached. Just the truth, resonance, and peace.